You're listening to Next Gen Nexus. Decoding the future of technology, one breakthrough at a time.
It's kind of crazy how kids these days just seem to be born knowing how to use phones and tablets and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah, they're definitely tech savvy, that's for sure.
Yeah, but I was thinking about that,
Yeah.
just because they know how to use all that stuff doesn't mean they're ready for like all the things that come with being online.
Right, exactly. They're excited to explore, but they really do need our guidance to do it safely.
And it can be scary out there.
Yeah.
I saw this statistic that said something like 60% of children encounter inappropriate content online before they're even 13.
Wow.
Yeah. And we're not even talking about like cyberbullying or online predators.
It's true. And that's why it is so important for us to like equip ourselves, with the knowledge and the tools to really help our kids be safe in the digital world.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit.
Okay.
What's the first thing parents should be thinking about?
I think the first thing is to think of it like teaching them how to be a good citizen, but in the online world.
Right.
We call this digital citizenship.
Right.
And every action they take online leaves a trace. It's like a digital footprint.
Oh, so it's kind of like a permanent record.
Exactly. And, colleges and future employers might look at their online activity.
Wow.
We need to help them understand that what they post online today can have real consequences for them down the road.
So how do we even start that conversation? Like,
Yeah.
How do we start talking about, responsible posting and things like that?
I always tell parents to start with a simple question, like, would you shout that in the middle of the schoolyard?
Oh, that's good.
It helps kids think about, is this appropriate to share online or not?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I think that would really resonate with kids.
Mm-hmm.
What else can parents do?
Talk about privacy.
Privacy. Okay.
It's important for kids to understand that, they shouldn't be sharing personal information online without permission.
Like what kind of information are we talking about?
Things like their home address, their phone number, or even the school they go to are all off limits.
Right. And I know it can be hard to keep up with all the different social media platforms that kids are using these days.
Yeah.
What are some of the big ones that parents need to be aware of?
You got Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat. They each have their own unique features and their own potential risks.
And it seems like there's always a new one popping up.
Always a new one.
Okay, so let's try to break these down one by one.
Okay.
What are some key things parents should know about Instagram?
On Instagram, privacy settings are key. You can make your child's account private, so only approved followers can see their posts and interact with them.
Okay.
It's also a good idea to have conversations about who they're allowing to follow them.
So it's not just about what they post, but also who they're connecting with.
Exactly. Now let's talk about TikTok. It's super popular with kids, but there's a lot of content on there that might not be appropriate for all ages.
That's what I've heard. Are there ways for parents to control what their kids are seeing on TikTok?
Yes. There's a feature called family pairing, and it lets parents link their account to their child's account.
Oh, so you can actually see what they're watching and set limits.
Absolutely. You can control things like screen time, restrict certain types of content, and even limit who they can direct message.
Wow. It's like you're right there with them.
It's really helpful.
That sounds really useful.
Yeah.
What about Snapchat?
Snapchat can be tricky because messages disappear,
Yeah, I've heard that.
but you can still talk to your kids about the importance of being mindful about what they share, even if it seems temporary.
So it still all comes back to having those open and honest conversations.
Right. And Snapchat does have some safety features like ghost mode.
What does that do?
It hides your child's location from others on the app.
Oh, wow. I didn't know about that. I'm learning so much. It seems like there are tools available,
Yeah.
but parents really need to take the time to learn about them and set them up properly.
Yes.
And it's not just a one-time thing, is it?
Definitely not. It's an ongoing process. Technology is always evolving, and we need to stay informed and adapt our approach as we need to.
Speaking of evolving, let's talk about cyberbullying. This is a huge issue that I know a lot of parents are worried about. It's not just happening on the playground anymore, it's moved online.
And it can be even more hurtful online because it can happen 24/7 and be seen by so many people.
Yeah, and it makes it so much harder to escape too.
Mm-hmm.
How can we define cyberbullying for kids so they understand what it is and how to spot it?
Well, it's important to make sure they know that cyberbullying takes many forms.
Okay.
It can be direct harassment through messages or comments. It could be publicly humiliating someone by spreading rumors or posting embarrassing photos, or even excluding someone from online groups on purpose.
I bet a lot of kids don't even realize that some of those behaviors are considered bullying.
Right, and that's why these conversations are so important. We need to be clear about what's acceptable and what crosses the line.
So what are some warning signs that parents should look out for? If a child is being cyberbullied, how might they act differently?
Keep an eye out for changes in behavior. Are they avoiding their devices even though they usually love being online? Do they seem anxious or upset when they get notifications?
Okay.
Or are they withdrawing from their friends and family, spending more and more time alone?
Yeah.
These could all be signs that something's wrong.
It's almost like they're grieving because those online spaces used to bring them joy, and now they're sources of stress and anxiety.
Right.
So what should parents do if they suspect their child is being cyberbullied?
First and foremost, listen to your child, let them know you believe them and that you're there to support them. Then start documenting everything. Take screenshots of messages, save emails, record any details that you can.
Why is documentation so important?
Well, it can be really helpful if you need to report the bullying to the platform or involve the school or even law enforcement.
I see. So after you document, what's next?
Block the bully on all platforms, report them to the platform administrators. If the bullying is happening at school, involve the school authorities as well. And if there are any serious threats involved, don't hesitate to contact law enforcement. Your child's safety comes first.
That's such good advice. I think a lot of parents feel helpless in these situations, but it sounds like there are some concrete steps that they can take to protect their kids.
Absolutely. And one of the important things parents can do is set clear boundaries and expectations around online behavior.
Okay, let's talk about those boundaries. What are some key things that parents need to know about setting limits and keeping their kids safe online?
Well, screen time is often the first thing that comes to mind.
And it can be a constant battle.
It can be.
My kids would be glued to their devices all day if I let them.
It's understandable. Technology is designed to be engaging, but it's important to establish healthy habits early on. Think of it like nutrition. We wouldn't let our kids eat candy all day, right?
Right, makes sense. So just like we have guidelines for healthy eating, we need guidelines for healthy tech use.
Exactly. There are some general age-based recommendations that can be helpful starting points.
What do those look like?
Well, for the little ones, ages 3 to 6 experts suggest limiting screen time to no more than 30 minutes a day.
Wow, that's pretty low.
It is as they get older, you can gradually increase that.
Okay, so what would it look like for older kids?
For kids ages 7 to 10, around an hour a day is a good starting point. And then for tweens and teens, it can go up to about 2 hours.
Okay.
But remember, these are just guidelines.
Right. Every child is different.
Exactly.
Some kids may need more or less screen time than others.
Exactly. It's important to observe your child and see how they're being affected by their screen time.
That makes sense. But even with guidelines, I know a lot of parents struggle to actually enforce those screen time limits. Any tips?
Definitely one strategy that can be really effective is creating tech-free zones in your home.
What does that look like?
Think about the times and spaces where you want to prioritize connection and face-to-face interaction. So bedrooms should be device-free at night to promote good sleep hygiene.
Huh.
Mealtimes are for family, not phones. And consider having some dedicated family time where everyone puts their devices away and engages in activities together.
I love that it's about being intentional about how and when we use technology.
Exactly. It's not about demonizing tech. It's about creating a healthy balance.
Okay, so we've talked about screen time.
Mm-hmm.
What about the content itself?
Yeah.
How can parents make sure that their kids are accessing age-appropriate content online?
Parental controls are a great tool for this.
What exactly are parental controls?
Most devices and internet routers offer them, and you can use them to block certain websites, filter out specific types of content, and even set time limits for how long certain apps can be used each day. It's like putting up guardrails on the digital highway.
I like that analogy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not about preventing kids from using technology altogether,
Right.
but about creating a safe environment for them to explore it.
Exactly.
What about content rating systems? Those little symbols you see on video games and movies.
Yes, those are definitely helpful. They give you an idea of the maturity level of the content and whether it's appropriate for your child's age. Pay attention to those age recommendations.
Yeah, I always try to look for those. You also mentioned monitoring browsing history earlier. I know some parents feel uncomfortable with that. It can feel invasive.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
It's all about finding a balance between respecting your child's privacy and ensuring their safety.
So how can parents approach monitoring in a way that feels respectful?
Have open conversations with your kids about why you're doing it and what you're looking for. Frame it as a safety measure, especially with younger children. You're not trying to spy on them, but rather make sure they're not stumbling upon things that could be harmful or upsetting.
And I think a lot of parents worry about, damaging their relationship with their kids by monitoring their online activity.
Yeah, I know.
But it sounds like if you approach it with transparency and focus on building trust, you can actually strengthen your relationship.
Absolutely.
How so?
It shows your child that you care about their well-being and that you're there to support them, and that can make them more likely to come to you if they encounter something upsetting or confusing online.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we've talked about screen time, content filtering, and monitoring. What about online friendships?
Okay.
I know a lot of kids are connecting with people they've never met in person. How can parents guide their kids in making safe and healthy connections online?
It all comes back to those basic rules of stranger danger that we teach kids in the offline world.
So even though it's online, it's still important to talk about things like not talking to strangers or sharing personal information with people you don't know.
Absolutely. Make sure your kids know they should never accept friend requests from people they don't know in real life. They should avoid private chats with strangers, and if anyone ever makes them feel uncomfortable or asks them to do something they don't want to do, they should tell you immediately.
That's a great reminder, and it all circles back to that open communication we keep talking about.
Exactly. Create a safe space for them to share any concerns without fear of judgment. Let them know you're on their team, not the enemy.
Yeah.
You're not trying to take away their fun. You're trying to help them stay safe.
Because ultimately, we want them to enjoy the benefits of technology, but do it safely and responsibly.
Right. It's about empowering them, not just restricting them. We want to equip them with the knowledge and the skills they need to navigate the digital world wisely and make good choices.
Speaking of empowerment, let's talk about some of the amazing resources that are available to help parents in this journey. Because let's face it, it can feel overwhelming. So much to learn and so much to keep up with.
I completely agree. But the good news is that parents don't have to figure this out alone. There are a lot of resources and support systems out there.
Like what?
Well, one of my favorite resources is Common Sense Media. They have a website and an app that offer tons of information, reviews, and ratings on all sorts of media, from apps and websites to movies and video games. They also have forums where parents can connect with each other and share tips and advice.
Oh, wow. So it's like a one-stop shop for parents who want to stay informed about the digital world.
Exactly. And the Family Online Safety Institute is another great resource. They have all kinds of information about online safety, from cyberbullying to social media to gaming.
Are there any resources specifically for parents who are struggling with things like setting screen time limits or dealing with online conflict?
There are some schools have digital safety counselors who can provide personalized guidance and support to parents. And there are online communities and support groups where parents can connect with each other and share their experiences.
I bet it's really reassuring for parents to know they're not alone in this.
It is. And remember, you don't have to be a tech expert to help your kids stay safe online. The most important thing is to be involved, stay informed, and keep those lines of communication open.
That's such great advice. Now, we've talked a lot about the parental role in keeping kids safe online, but what about the kid's perspective? How can we involve them in this conversation without it feeling like a lecture?
That's a great question, and we are going to talk all about that. In the next part of the show, we'll be exploring how to have open, honest, and age-appropriate conversations with kids about online safety.
I can't wait to hear more. This has been so informative.
Right.
I'm excited for part 2.
Yeah, me too. Welcome back. So let's kind of shift gears a little bit and talk about how to involve kids in these conversations about online safety.
Okay.
It's a really critical part of the process.
It makes sense. If we want them to buy in, they need to feel like they're part of the solution, not just being told what to do. But honestly, it can be tough to know where to start.
Yeah.
Any tips on how to approach these conversations?
The first thing to remember is that fear tactics don't work.
Okay.
Scaring kids about all the dangers online will probably just make them less likely to come to you if they encounter something upsetting.
So what's a better approach?
Just treat online safety conversations just like any other important topic you discuss with your kids.
Okay.
Want to be open and honest, and most importantly, keep it age appropriate.
Yeah, I can definitely see how the conversation would need to look different for a 5-year-old versus a 15-year-old.
Exactly. With younger kids, you can keep it really simple. Talk about stranger danger in a way they can understand. You can say something like, would you tell a stranger on the street your address or phone number? The same rules apply online.
Oh, that's a great way to make it relatable.
Yeah.
What about for older kids who are already using social media?
For them, you can focus on the positive aspects of technology.
Okay.
Talk about how much you enjoy connecting with friends and family online, or how helpful it is to find information for school projects, but also acknowledge the potential risks.
Like what kind of risks?
Talk about things like cyberbullying, inappropriate content, the importance of protecting their privacy. You can even use real-life examples or news stories to illustrate your points.
That's a good idea. It makes it more real for them.
Exactly. And here's a key tip: involve them in the process.
Okay.
Ask for their opinions. Let them teach you about the apps and games they enjoy. It shows that you respect their world and that you value their input.
I love that it turns it into a two-way conversation instead of a lecture. So what are some concrete things parents can do to create that ongoing dialogue?
Make online safety a regular check-in, not just a one-time conversation.
Okay.
Maybe you have a weekly family meeting where you talk about what's going on online, ask them what they're enjoying, what's challenging, if they have any concerns.
It's about building that trust so they feel comfortable coming to us with anything.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to admit if you don't know something. You can say, I'm not familiar with that app. Can you show me how it works? Maybe we can learn about it together.
It's about being vulnerable and modeling that it's okay to not have all the answers. What about when kids make mistakes online? It's bound to happen, right?
Of course we all make mistakes. The important thing is how we respond.
Yeah.
If your child comes to you because they posted something they regret or they accidentally shared personal information, don't shame them.
That's so important. Shame just shuts down communication.
Exactly. Instead, use it as a teachable moment. Say something like, okay, I understand that happened. Let's talk about how we can fix it and what we can learn from this experience.
So it's about being supportive guides, not digital police officers.
Exactly. We want our kids to know that we're on their team and that we're here to help them navigate this complex world.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about how to have those open and honest conversations with kids. But are there any tools or strategies that can help parents feel more confident about their kids' online safety?
There are. We've already mentioned parental controls, which can be really helpful for filtering content and setting screen time limits.
Are there any other tools parents should know about?
There are some great apps and software programs that can help parents monitor their child's activity, set screen time limits, and even block certain apps or websites.
Can you give us some examples?
Sure. There's Google Family Link, which is great for Android devices. Apple has a feature called Screen Time that allows you to set limits and see how your child is using their device. And there are also paid services like Burkenet Nanny that offer more comprehensive monitoring and filtering options.
Wow, that's really helpful. I think a lot of parents worry that these tools are too intrusive or that their kids will find ways to get around them. What do you say to those concerns?
I understand those concerns. It's important to find a balance between safety and privacy. You can have open conversations with your kids about why you're using these tools and what you're hoping to achieve. And remember, no tool is perfect. The most important thing is to stay engaged and involved in your child's online life.
Speaking of staying engaged, let's talk about the importance of role modeling. Healthy tech habits. Kids are always watching us, right?
They are. So it's important to be mindful of our own technology use.
So if we're constantly on our phones, they're going to think that's normal behavior.
Exactly. Try to set aside some dedicated tech-free time each day, both for yourself and for your family. Make a conscious effort to put your phone away during mealtimes and family activities.
That's a great reminder. We need to practice what we preach. It's about leading by example.
Right. And remember, it's okay to make mistakes. If you find yourself slipping into bad tech habits, don't beat yourself up. Just acknowledge it, make adjustments, and keep trying.
It's all about progress, not perfection. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about tools, strategies, and resources for keeping kids safe online. What's the most important takeaway you want parents to remember?
I think the most important thing is to stay engaged, stay informed, and stay connected.
What do you mean by that?
Stay engaged in your child's online life. Have those open and honest conversations, stay informed about the latest trends and technologies, and stay connected to your child. Let them know that you're there for them no matter what.
That's beautiful, and I think that's a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. This has been so insightful and helpful.
It's my pleasure. I hope it's empowered parents to feel more confident about navigating the digital world with their kids.
I know it has for me and to all our listeners out there. Don't keep this valuable information to yourself. Share what you've learned with your friends, family members, anyone who might benefit from it. Let's create a safer online world for everyone. Thanks for listening to Next Gen Nexus. You know, we talked about so many practical tips in the last couple parts.
We did.
And I think the idea of staying engaged and connected really stuck with me. You know, it's not just about like setting rules, it's about building a strong foundation of trust with our kids.
Absolutely. Trust is key. You know, when kids feel like they can talk to us openly about anything, they're more likely to come to us if they encounter something, tricky online.
So how do we build that trust, especially when it comes to something as like potentially sensitive as online safety?
It starts with creating a safe space for open and honest conversation.
Right.
And remember, it's not like a one-time talk. This is about like weaving these conversations into our everyday interactions with our kids.
Okay, so can you give us some examples of like what that might look like in practice?
Sure. Imagine your child is showing you a funny video they found on TikTok.
Oh, yeah.
You could use that as an opportunity to talk about how videos can be manipulated or, how important it is to be critical of the information that they see online.
So it's about finding those like natural moments to kind of sprinkle in some online safety lessons.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be a big formal sit-down conversation every time.
Yeah, I think that makes it less intimidating for both parents and kids.
Yeah, definitely.
What about when it comes to things like setting screen time limits or, establishing those boundaries around online behavior?
I think it's really important to involve your kids in the process.
Okay.
Ask them for their input. So instead of saying like, you can only have 1 hour of screen time per day, try something like, hey, I'm thinking about setting some screen time limits. What feels reasonable to you? What are some activities you'd like to do offline?
I like that it's about finding that middle ground, right? Not just like imposing rules from on high,
right,
but working together to create a plan that everyone feels good about.
Exactly. And remember, flexibility is key.
Okay.
There might be times when it makes sense to adjust those screen time limits or make exceptions. Maybe there's a special occasion or your child needs to do some research for a school project. Be willing to be flexible as long as you're having those open conversations.
That makes a lot of sense. I think one of the biggest challenges for parents is just like staying informed about all the latest apps, trends, technologies. Feels like there's always something new.
It can definitely feel overwhelming, but there are a lot of great resources out there to help parents stay up to date.
Like, what are some of your favorites?
Well, we've already mentioned Common Sense Media and the Family Online Safety Institute. Those are fantastic starting points, and don't be afraid to tap into your own network.
Yeah.
With other parents, teachers, or even your kids' friends.
Oh, that's a good idea.
They might be able to point you towards new apps or trends that you haven't heard of yet.
It's all about being curious and staying engaged.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to experiment. Try out some of the apps or games that your kids are using. It's a great way to understand their world and to have some fun together.
I love that. Okay, so we've talked about the importance of communication, staying informed, and involving kids in the process. Any final words of wisdom for parents who are feeling a bit overwhelmed by the whole online safety thing?
Just remember you're not alone. Every parent is grappling with these challenges. So be kind to yourself, celebrate the small wins, and most importantly, keep those lines of communication open with your kids. You got this.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. This has been such a valuable conversation.
It's been my pleasure.
And to all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of online safety. We hope you've learned some practical tips and strategies to help your kids navigate the digital world safely and responsibly. And remember, don't keep this information to yourself. Share what you've learned with friends, family members, anyone who might benefit. Let's work together to create a safer online world for everyone. Thanks for listening to Next Gen Nexus.